Good evening and welcome to another day of 365 days of amazing stories with Theo Mayer. Here we are. We are on day number 3 of 2024. And though I started telling stories from my own early childhood, I'm going to pause for a moment because I miss telling the good old stories. So today I'm going to tell the story of the stag, the hunter, and the doe. Now, once, a long time ago, but perhaps not so very far from where you are listening to this, there was a stag who was the leader of a great herd of deer. And he had a doe, a wife, who he loved dearly, and she loved him dearly. They lived in mutual love and respect for each other, and it was a joy to be around the two of them for the rest of the deer and any other creatures that happened by when they were there. They lived in a beautiful area, forests, meadows, running fresh, clean water over stones, melodies of creeks, water flowing, breeze blowing through the leaves and the branches of trees, sometimes storms, sometimes cold, often warm, sometimes hot, dry days, wet days, but always in the beautiful world of nature. Now, it just so happened that in this forest, there was a hunter that frequently set snares to catch animals. He was very good at it. He knew where the trails were. He knew how to set up those snares in just the right way so that they could not be seen, but were likely to be stepped into. It just so happened that one day when the stag was leading his herd of deer through the forest, he unfortunately stepped into one of the snares of this hunter. Some of his snares were for small animals, some for large. Some snares actually, when they were tripped, pulled the animal up into the air. Others simply tightened and were of such a material that they cut into the animal's skin. And the harder the animal pulled, the more the snare bit into the animal's flesh. Now, it just so happened that the snare that the stag stepped into was one of the latter. He stepped into the snare and immediately could feel that he was caught. Now, he knew he had great strength, and he pulled. And as he did, the steel wire cut into his foot, just above the hoof. He pulled again, and the wire cut more deeply. Trying to gain his balance as this pain bit into his skin, he pulled even though he didn't want to. And the wire reached his bone. It cut so deeply, and he fell to the ground. He could not get himself up. It seemed every which way he turned and struggled, it just made it worse. Now, the rest of the deer, on hearing his cry of pain, ran for their lives. All except, of course, his wife, the doe. She came up to him and looked down as he was struggling, and he said, get up and run, leave quickly. Don't stay here. Leave before the hunter comes. But she would not. She had laid down next to him, and was licking his face and said, please, please get up. Free yourself. You are powerful. He said, I cannot. I've tried. Every time I do, it cuts more deeply. Go, he said. You must go before the hunter gets here. She said, I will not. I will stay with you until you are free. Nothing he could say would persuade her otherwise. And even as they heard the hunter approaching, she would not leave. He was crashing through the jungle, through the brush, snapping branches as he went. They could hear him. He was growing closer, step by step. Suddenly he crashed through the brush in front of them, and there stood. Now the doe had gotten up and had taken steps in his direction. He held in his hand a small spear, a stabbing spear, for killing whatever animals were caught in his snares. And he stepped forward and he said, what is this? 2 deer in 1 snare? I have never seen such a thing. The doe took another step toward him. He smelled like, well, dead animals. He had on a buckskin jacket that had holes in it. It was so worn and old, but still he wore it. It had the smell of rancid fat from the animals that he would skin out. His hands were calloused. His hair was, well, rather unkempt, but he did live his life in the forest, a hunter. The doe stepped forward, as I said, and said, please, let my husband go. The entire herd of deer will suffer if he is not at their lead. Take me instead, and let him go. The hunter took his spear and plunged it into the earth. He said, I will not take you as a replacement for your husband. Though I am a hunter, I am a human. And this day you both shall go free, for I have never seen an act of courage and bravery like this. Stag, your wife has saved you both today. And with this, he went over to the stag that was still laying on the ground and delicately took its leg and its foot and freed it from the snare. The stag struggled to its feet. It could barely put any weight on that leg. The stag thanked the hunter, of course, and said, man, I wish you your freedom, and I wish to repay you for this kindness that you have given us. Take this as a gift, that you may never hunt again or kill an animal. And with this, the stag dug its antlers into the earth and freed a beautiful gem that was buried there. It flicked it towards the hunter, and the hunter caught it as it was flicked to him. And he looked down, and in his hands he held a priceless jewel, which once sold could easily support he and his family, well, for many years and perhaps the rest of their lives. With this, the stag leaned against the shoulder of the doe, and the two of them went walking off, the stag limping with every step it took with its damaged leg, damaged foot, injured hoof. The hunter watched the man, I should say, for he had become more of a man than he ever had before, The man watched them leave, watched them go. And as he did, he looked down at this jewel in his hand. And yes, priceless, priceless it was.